Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cyrus Webb Presents. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again. Also, want to welcome those in on the radio dial here in Yazoo City at Max WYAD 94.1 FM and WYADonline.com. Want to welcome those tuning in on the simulcast on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and on X. And also bringing our friends over on Instagram and finally our friends over on Amazon Live. You guys are going to really enjoy this next segment as we're wrapping up the month of February. This is a great way to be able to restart not only your own life, but also to be able to think about the choices you're making heading into the next month, into the months to come. And we're now live on Amazon Live with Cyrus Ware Presents. Going to type you guys in the welcome message over there. If you guys are new to us on Amazon, welcome. Make sure you guys hit that follow button either here in this corner or down below. You also will see the book by our next guest. Michael Leach is with us today. He's the author of a book I had a chance to read called Faith Over Fear. We're going to talk to Michael not only about his extraordinary life he's been able to have both personally and professionally, the lessons he's been able to learn and what he hopes you're able to take away from the book as well. Michael, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Cyrus, great to be with you. Thank you.
Well, look, I was very excited, Michael, when I first heard about your book. I was glad to be able to get an advanced copy of it. So you've been celebrating this month the release of Faith Over Fear. What has this experience been like for you to begin this new chapter as a published author?
Oh, wow. The experience has been so surreal, such a blessing. I often say, we can only make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give. And this was just a beautiful moment for me to really give people, friends, family, strangers, readers and listeners abroad, just something not just inspirational, but practical that can add value to them and get them from where they are to where they hope to be.
Michael, I went into this book. I was excited because I like the title, Faith Over Fear. but when I got into it, as someone who's just being introduced to you, this is our first conversation together, you really let us in. You let us into not only what you've been able to achieve in your life, whether we're talking about in sports, in public service, but also just how you've been able to approach life decisions. What was that decision like for you to be able to let the world into your journey and to be able to show the lessons along the way you've learned?
Yeah, it was very cathartic, as it is from most authors when you're writing your story, and very much intentional and deliberate, right? I think this book is for people I describe it as navigating uncertainty who want clarity,
Yeah.
and I think we're living in a moment right now that is just full of uncertainty. Even in my life before I started to process, and that uncertainty is producing a lot of fear in people.
Mhm.
And I've been in some high pressure moments and environments, from the South Side of Chicago to the NFL, which we'll get into, and ultimately the White House. And I kept seeing the same thing everywhere, Cyrus. Folks were functioning, but they were anxious. They were
Yeah.
producing, but they were exhausted. I just really wanted to give them something behind the curtain, if you will, because people don't relate to your sort of milestones. They do relate to your battles. And so that was what the process was. It was a constant process of surrender and actually living what I was writing, and trusting
Mhm.
that, beyond the fear of what could go wrong, and telling my story the way I did, having faith on what could go right in the people and the lives that would receive it.
We always hear that saying, and we hear people say, Michael, have faith, right? And that
Mhm.
seems like one of those things that, for one, we've gotten used to saying. But I
Yeah.
love the fact that, as the title alludes to, faith over fear, it leads me to the first selection I want to share with our audience. And I've never seen it worded quite this way before, Michael, the way that you word it in the book. And it really gives our audience something to think about. As you talk about this and your own journey with doubt, you write this in the book. For those who have the hardcover, it's on page 31. You say, there were moments of doubt, nights when I wondered if I could keep up with the demands of both college and my burgeoning career in sports. There were times when the exhaustion felt overwhelming, but every time doubt crept in, I reminded myself of one thing, and this is the thing that was so powerful to me. Faith and fear ask you to believe in something that hasn't happened yet. I could either let fear convince me that I wasn't capable of handling it all, or I could lean into faith and trust that all the sacrifices I was making would pay off. I mean, that's a powerful thing for our audience to think about, that
Yeah.
both faith and fear both are about what hasn't happened. What was that like for you to grapple with and to realize in your life, Michael?
Yeah, it was very much, going back to this word and this topic of surrendering, right? I'm a faith driven person, and I think we all have these dreams in life, right? The dream house, the dream spouse, you name it.
Mhm.
But I learned really quickly that we can block our dreams if we allow our fear to grow bigger than our faith, right?
Yeah.
And when you think about those two ideas, faith and fear, just like you just outlined for the audience, they are literally asking us the very same thing. If you're believing for something to happen that hasn't happened yet, but you're believing for it. If you're fearful of what could go wrong, it hasn't happened yet, but you're fearful that it could happen. But only one in my life experience has moved me forward. And I would say that, Cyrus, in every major transition, from the NFL to politics into the White House, even to becoming a father, I had to stop asking, how do I control this? And start asking, how do I stay aligned in this? And I would say for me, faith wasn't a feeling, it was a discipline. And I had to surrender outcomes and stop trying to control timing, perception, and results. The second piece, I had to get honest with fear. I think a lot of us, we avoid fear or the feeling of it, but you cannot change what you will not confront. And so that was a really big thing, and just confronting that it was there in the first place. And lastly, take one faithful step at a time. That's what I had to do. That was the process for me. Not 10 steps, not five, just one. And I think when you distill it like that and simplify it that way, it has a way of really opening up so many doors, and revelations for you.
Yeah, it's such a great point. Chris Irvin, hello to you over there on Facebook. Glad to see you. See you guys piling in over there on IG as well. The Crazy Kirk Girl, hello to you. Patrick Coates, hello to you over there on IG. Angela Anderson, hello to you. The Crazy Kirk Girl on IG. Michael says, love it. Who is our guest? Our guest is Michael Leach, the Crazy Kirk Girl, and we'll be putting the link for you guys over there on IG. In fact, you'll find it in my stories over there on IG. The link to also be able to get the book. And I think that leads us to this point, Michael. And again, the reason why I want to read that passage, because as we talk about, as you alluded to, and you just talked about faith and fear, what they both require of us, the same can definitely be true about action and inaction, right?
Yeah.
Because whether we are, a person who makes a decision, it's either what are we going to do then at that point? Are we going to actually act? Or are we just going to be able to say that I thought about something instead of doing? Have you always been a person who was willing to take the chance?
Yes, it's a great question. I would say early on, not necessarily. And I'll,
Okay.
and I'll answer it this way by sharing a quick snippet of a story on what it was like to ride my bike growing up on the south side of Chicago, to answer your
Mhm.
question. My,
Mhm.
my parents, I lived on the south side of Chicago. And if you could just imagine this really quickly, I would mount my bike on a stretch of concrete sidewalk, and I could only ride my bike to the left side of the home to this imaginary invisible line out, the second to last house on the block. Stop the bike, turn it around, and go in the opposite direction and stop at that imaginary line, back and forth, back and forth. And I say that because the irony was that the very rules meant to protect us early in life often end up shaping the boundaries we impose on ourselves later in life. And so for
Mhm.
me, growing up as a black kid on the South Side, I was trying to navigate that tension on how far I could go or how far I could act and take that chance. And so what I learned really quickly as I kind of got deeper into my journey, both personally and professionally, was that it was one thing to know what you should do. It's a whole nother thing to act. Understanding may change minds, but action changes lives. And I think, going back to when fear shows up, I started taking the step or the chance when I ran three questions anytime fear showed up. It was asking myself, what is this fear trying to protect, right? My reputation or security? What am I trying to control that I don't actually have? Timing or
Mhm.
outcomes, how people see me. And then the last question was, what would love do next? Or what would obedience do next? And
Mhm.
that simple framework would unlock so much and has unlocked so many folks in my realm of influence, from the NFL to the White House. And that's kind of how I make the transition. Early on, I would say, no, I wasn't the guy to take the chance. But
Gotcha.
later on, when I recognize those questions and what closing the gap between knowing and doing can do for your life, that's when I started just doing it more consistently.
Yeah. The other thing that we get to learn about you, Michael, is that you are someone who, even when you find success, that you're not someone who's not afraid to move beyond what's become comfortable. And
Yeah.
you mentioned the NFL. I alluded to it as well. You talk about the NFL as people will see in the book when they get their own copy of the book. So you guys over on Amazon, you all can be able to get the print or Kindle edition now here on Amazon. For you guys joining us on the simulcast, you guys will find the link there too. But you talk about the decision to leave. And I want to talk about that because it leads me to one of the other big gems that I felt when I was reading the book. Because
Mm.
there are some people, Michael, who they get to a certain place in their life and that's looked at as success, right? Especially in the eyes of others. And they're like, you've made it, you got here. But for you, what we're able to see is that you realize that was not enough. Talk to us about what that was like for you to reflect on as you were writing it, about not only what you were able to do in the NFL, but the decision to leave.
Yeah, I had been working in the NFL. Right, I had a a little over a decade long career with the NFL. Three at the team level with the Chicago Bears as assistant to head coach, and then later at headquarters. And for me, the work was very meaningful. Right, my dream for the longest had been to be the NFL commissioner or an NFL team president.
Mhm.
And I got to a point. This was shortly after things really erupted around Colin Kaepernick, and just calling attention to really, really important work that, in many respects, had been avoided for some time. And I wanted to really explore what did it look like for me to really step into that work in a more meaningful way, and what that meant for me. And so I learned this from Dr. John Maxwell many years ago, and he drew that distinction between ambition and direction. And he said it this way, and I'll offer this to our viewers and listeners. He said, "What good does it profit you to climb the ladder of success year after year, only to get to the top and realize the ladder is leaning against the wrong building?" Right?
Mm,
That building could be a career, it could be a relationship, it could be
yeah.
an identity, it can even be a city. And so for me, that distinction really became crystallized when I was right around year 4, year 5, and I had to make a decision, right? How do you know when it's time to move on from the old thing so that you can create space for the new thing? And so for me, I wanted to explore what did that look like for me in practice, to not just lead the work around inclusion, but to do it in a surrendering way. And what I mean by surrendering way is literally surrendering what I knew to be my identity for so long, and being willing to trust that God knew what he was doing. And I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of people, leaders, parents, who have been holding on to something for years that they were only meant to hold for a season. And
Yeah.
so that's why I include in the book a very clear, tangible exercise, very short, that gives you your score, and that score gives you a description on what it actually means for you right now. And so I'm so encouraged by that realization and revelation, and I really, really hope folks lean into that one, because that's been a big one that keeps coming up in all the interviews I'm doing.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
read a book, Michael, some 20 years ago, and stayed with me. And it started with the title. The title of the book was "Farther Than I Meant to Go, Longer Than I Meant to Stay."
Hmm.
And in the book, the writer talked about that being in a place, in a relationship, in a situation that was not good, but getting comfortable, and then the
Yeah.
decision of that shift. You write this about the shift, again, for those who have the hardcover edition on page 90. You say this about what happened to you after that decision, Michael. You write, "The decision to leave the NFL came in waves, a series of confirmations, moments of clarity, and occasional doubt. But once the commitment was made, it felt like everything shifted. I could sense the gravity of the step I was about to take. It wasn't just about leaving the comfort of a stable career. It was about stepping into a new realm of influence, responsibility, and unknown challenges. As I prepared to make my resignation official, there were moments where I found myself second guessing. The weight of the unknown loomed large. What if this move didn't lead to anything concrete? What if I was stepping away from the NFL just as more opportunities were opening up for me? But the voice inside me, the one that said, 'This is it,' was louder than my fear." I want to talk about that for our audience, because I think we all know what that voice can be like that tells us this is the right thing to do. It's like, but yeah, I don't know, because what I got is a good thing. What have you been telling people? As you mentioned that exercise, what have you been telling people about the importance of not only trusting that voice, but willing to step into it?
Yeah, something that I've really been trying to tell folks a lot lately is this fundamental truth, and that is this: in life, whatever you are not changing, you are choosing, right? Whatever habit you're not changing, you're choosing. Whatever mindset you're not changing, you're choosing. And so, just getting really, really clear on taking stock on what it is that you're choosing day to day, week to week, and month to month. I'm really, really at a space and place now where um, there are folks who I heard it say this way by a pastor who was really influential in my life years ago. How if you try to hold on to the old thing too long, how it was, what you wanted, how it was supposed to go in your mind, you might miss today's miracle trying to hold on to yesterday's blessing, right? And we see it happen over and over again. And so for me, I've been really trying to get people to slow down, right? Right. Fear will always try to get you to rush to do something. Faith slows you down long enough to choose wisely. And so
Mm.
I've been really trying to encourage folks to sit down, write it down, go out for a walk in nature, do whatever you have to do that is resonant with you. But just carving out that time. We are inundated with so much information. We get more information today, Cyrus, in a single day than our ancestors did in a lifetime. And
Right.
so really trying to clear out the noise and writing it down, making it plain, but then having the courage to act on what you find out after writing those things down.
Yeah, it's such a great point. It's such a great reminder for all of us. Kevin O'Sullivan, hello to you over there on IG. I want to reset real quick, Michael, and say for those who are just tuning in, welcome. You're watching Cyrus Webb Presents on Amazon Live or listening to Conversations Live on WYAD 94.1 FM. Michael Leach is our guest today. He's celebrating this month the release of his book, Faith Over Fear, already an Amazon bestseller. We're talking with him about what it's been like for him to look back at his journey, where he's been able to find success, how he's been able to make difficult decisions, but also the role that his faith has played. We're going to let you guys know how to stay connected with Michael because he is on the move. So we appreciate him taking some moments with us. Michael, the next thing I want to talk to you about is something that really stood out to me too. And I hope our audience really hears this. And as someone who grew up the nerdy kid, I never felt the need to necessarily to fit in or to feel like I need to be a part of the cool group. But we live in a different world now where people, when they're excluded, they do feel isolated. They do feel like something's wrong with them and they turn inward. You talk about exclusion in an interesting way in this book when it came to yourself and realizing how sometimes that can be a protection. What was that like for you to realize?
Yeah, you know what? Because there was moments, and I'll share it like this. Being excluded or being rejected, right? We can fit so many different words and terms into that.
Mhm.
And I shared that one example that I'll share is when I went for this role that got posted at the NFL headquarters, and it was their chief diversity officer role, and it would have been their first ever CDO role at the league office. And I had been volunteering my time around DEI efforts and had been working my way, up the ranks. And to, and to make a long story short, after giving my spill, he leaned back and we connect you with them to potentially support their team. Did you all catch that? I wasn't even going to be considered, right? Sort of
Yeah.
excluded from the process, if you will. And as much as that, was discouraging and disappointing, I had to go back to my foundational principles and values around just serving. I have to keep serving in my other roles at the league. And, one of the best ways to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. And it
Yeah.
wasn't until I lost myself in just continuing to do the work, was a few months had went by, and the opportunity came through my wife with Joe Biden's campaign in 2019. And for me, again, if it wasn't in sports, I was ignoring the opportunity. But God, something told me, just learn about the scope. I get on a call with this guy who was looking to hire this chief people officer role, thinking I would connect someone for them. And he stops me, Cyrus. And he says, we envision you for the role. What do you think? And I said, yes. And
Mm.
so all that to say, the principle there was that sometimes, what you call leaving a good idea is you stepping into a God idea. And so for me, I had to really learn and walk in this realization that in real time, what is rejection is often redirection. And that is what sort of stuck with me from that moment forward.
Yeah. I love that example when you're talking about the NFL, Michael. I also love the example in the book about your time in public service.
Yeah.
And what you said was this. Hey, Stacy, good to see you over there on Facebook. Glad you could be able to join us. You say this about an experience that you relate, and our audience will see when they read the book,
Yeah.
Michael. But you say, I found my own sense of closure not through resolution, but through faith. The experience underscored an enduring truth. Moments of exclusion are not meant to define us, but to refine us. They
Yeah.
challenge us to stay grounded in our purpose, even when faced with adversity. And then you go on to say this, Michael, on page 151 exclusion has a way of forcing you into introspection. It makes you question not just the systems around you, but the beliefs within you. It pushes you to examine the tension between what you hope to achieve and the resistance you face along the way. I love that because I think a lot of times, again, people feel like when they're not part of a group or not part of a decision or not giving an opportunity, that that's rejection. What helped you in your perspective of thinking about it, not only of, as you mentioned, redirection, but also a time for you to be able to refine what you truly even want?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that, as succinctly as I could put it and distill that, and this is probably in Shadows of Exclusion, which is one of the more challenging chapters to write, where I
Mhm,
was excluded from a reception in the White House that I thought I
mhm.
should have been inside of.
Yeah.
What it taught me at its core, Cyrus, was that one, exclusion can come for anybody. It is a universal theme, right? It can come for a pro athlete who's making others uncomfortable by the way they're protesting. As we've seen, it can come for a late night television host, and
Mhm,
yes, it can even come for a chief diversity officer who's fighting for inclusion, um, for an event that was centered around inclusion. And what I learned was that usually rejection or exclusion is a signal. Just like fear is a messenger, it's a horrible leader, but a good messenger. Exclusion, in the same way, is a signal and a messenger for you to not tell you anything about your value, but to tell you about the people controlling the thing or involved with the thing that you were excluded from. Right.
mhm.
And so we have to draw that distinction in that the goal of this book and that moment wasn't to exclude the feeling of fear or exclusion, is to not be led by it when it shows up. And so for me,
Yeah.
it was a messenger about not my value, but about the people in it. And then once you have the information, now you have something. Again, understanding may change minds, action changes lives. What do you want to do with the information after you have it?
I love that. So that leads me to the final thing I want to ask you about then, Michael. And again, appreciate you spending some time with us. Hello to
Yeah.
you, Harry. Good to see you over there on IG. What
Hey,
is your hope when people learn about you in this book, as I've been able to do, when they learn about how you've been able to deal with challenges and difficult decisions? What do you hope it does for them when they kind of think about the uncertainty that they face in their lives?
yeah, you know what? I want readers and listeners to stop outsourcing their peace to external conditions, right? I want them to move from reaction to response. I want them to leave with tools they can use when the next uncertain moment shows up, because it will, right? This book is not just for this moment, but for the moments still to come. And I would just say that, if for me, I just know deeply that with all the uncertainty and all the things that are sort of swirling around us, everything people project publicly isn't always what they're dealing with privately. And so, to you, if you're navigating a decision, a transition, or a season where clarity feels thin, faith over fear was written for you, right? And my hope is that it becomes something that you don't just read or listen to, but something you use. And that's my hope and prayer. And I'm encouraged and believing that many of you will be one of them.
I believe that's so true. Again, everyone, Michael Leach has been our guest. The book, again, is Faith Over Fear, available now here on Amazon. You guys can get it in print or the Kindle edition. Definitely, you can tell, inspiring, enlightening, but also something that we can be able to share with other people as well. Michael, congratulations to you again on the book. I'm so glad we had a chance to chat. I got a comment here
Thanks.
from Chris. Chris says, "Dang it, Cyrus, you mentioned the book you read 20 years ago. And when you said that, I thought about the 1980s, not the mid 2000s."
There we go. I love you.
Well, I tell you, hey, generations, Chris. Well, Michael, how can our audience stay connected with you, man?
Wow. Well, first, follow me on social, Instagram, and all the channels at Mr. Michael Leach, at MrMichaelLeach. And then come learn more about how I can serve you and support you and partner with you on our journey of choosing faith over fear at myfaithoverfear.com. I'm so proud of each and every one of you for staying engaged with Cyrus and his platform and his community. And I encourage you to engage with us as well.
Love it. Well, Michael, I look forward to staying connected with you, man, and looking forward to our next conversation together.
Absolutely, Cyrus. So proud of you. Keep going. Thank you for the
Thank you.
time.
I appreciate that. And we thank your audience for tuning in to another great segment of Cyrus Represents and Conversations Live. Until next time, you'll make it a great one. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.